Hello and welcome to the Sub1 YouTube channel. My name is Ray, and in this video, My Robot Lab Part 7, we're going to look at the clock service. Okay, so let's start up the clock service. I don't have the Arduino service, I've just installed the latest version 1.1.1001. So we'll go to runtime. We're going to call it the clock. And clock and start it. Okay, so the clock service is a very simple service. There's not much to it at all, really. We can set in, say, 1000 milliseconds and hit start, and every 1000 milliseconds or 1 second it will count up, or pretty close to it anyway. The service works by creating a thread and putting the thread asleep for the time you specify in milliseconds. We can run this out to 10,000 milliseconds, and the updates will change to once every 10 seconds. Now, the clock service running as a separate service like I have on the screen at the moment doesn't do a real lot. Where its real power comes in is when you're using it within a script or something else. So let's go and have a look at the service page for it on My Robot Lab. So on My Robot Lab, if you go to the menu, go to documentation, scroll down to get service matrix, and then we can scroll down till you find clock and click on it. Like all other services, there is a Java links, and I think from memory it needs a little bit of work, which I will get to at some stage to help them out. But in the example code, Greg has actually done, or Greg Perry, as his real name, has done a lot of work here in trying to get it up to speed. So we can actually start the clock service from Python, as you can any other service for that matter, with the runtime, start, and clock. We can call it, we can have multiple clocks running, so we can create multiple clock services. In this case, it's just called clock, but you might have one called idle, or you might have one called watchdog, or one called random, and you can specify different time intervals on each one. You set the interval in milliseconds, and you can add a listener. Now, this is where the real power comes in for the clock, is the add listener. In this case, we've defined clock pulse and we pass in time data. And what he's done is he's added a listener listening to the pulse, calling it through Python, and the function will be clock pulse. So it'll call this and it'll print the time data. And we will actually run this example shortly. The other thing we can do is we can also capture when the clock is starting and when it's stopped. So we can actually print into Python somewhere the clock has started or the clock has stopped. This can also be handy. You can use it to trigger other events within your robot program. So you might have a program in a robot dog, for example. You can tell it to sit and it starts a timer. After the time has elapsed, and that might be 4 or 5 minutes, the dog will lie down. Okay, so continuing on, we can start the clock, we can stop the clock, and there is actually a restart the clock. And restart the clock essentially stops the clock and restarts it from the scratch without actually triggering the pulse. and that can be very useful if you do have an idle timer. So if your robot is sitting there doing nothing and then you tell it to do something, it will reset the clock on the idle timer. If it reaches the idle timeout before the you have another activity, it can cause the robot to go to sleep. So this is an example of that, where we actually have a return. The other one is if you have a routine that can sometimes get caught up and run an excessive amount of time because of some unforeseen error, you can actually put in what's called a watchdog, where each time you restart your program, your routine, you reset the time clock. And if it takes longer than the predefined period, an action could be made to stop that routine and restart it, or something along those lines. So this is where you can use it as a watchdog. All right, so let's go back into my robot lab. I'm going to release this service. So it's currently stopped. No, it's not. It's still running. Won't let me do that because I didn't have a time set. Let's go one. Start. There's no stop button. I will have to get on to him about that one. All right, so let's release the clock. So the clock is now gone. Let's go to Python. And up here we have examples. And if we go into the examples and we look for clock, which is down the bottom here. And here is our basic example for a clock. If we execute that, and you can see it's counting away. So the routine in here is on time, print a date and time. Now the major difference, as I understand it, between an epoch and the time is the format. All right, so we can stop the clock. So I'm just going to go into script, clock dot stop clock. At that, I actually select window. Execute that. And the clock has stopped running. And you'll see it stopped running there as well. Okay, that'll do for this video. If you like these videos, don't forget to click on like, subscribe, ring that notification bell so you're notified when other videos come out. It's also a form of support that helps the channel a great deal and costs you absolutely nothing. If you'd like to support the channel further, I do have a Patreon account, and you can join my VIPs Go Lucky and Lorenz Berger, as well as my Builder Patreon Almorales45. You'll find a link in the description below. I also have a Discord channel. You can talk to either Fred or myself or one of the other members of our growing community. You'll find a link in the description below. And we'll see you in the next video.